it's a pleasure, and thank you very much for, first of all, coming to us on our premise, since ESSEC Asia-Pacific. You know, ESSEC is a school that originated in Europe, like in France, actually, more than 100 years ago, in a system that is fairly different than the Anglo-Saxon systems. You know, France has been in competition with the UK for cultural dominance for centuries. When it goes to higher educations, the people in charge in France have done everything to do things differently than the British. The problem is, at the end of the day, we lost, and they win, because the system that expanded all over the world is mainly the British system, not the French system. Now we have to cope with that. And in our systems, business schools and School of Engineering and School of Architecture are usually freestanding institutions. They are not part of universities. That's come from the 18th century. And ESSEC is a result of that, even if it's only 100 years old. The oldest of this system is a Royal School for Bridge and Road, that's now called the National Schools for Bridge and Road, which is the oldest of these independent schools, again, not belonging to universities, because it's higher educations. We deliver PhDs and master's degree and so on, but the schools have protected themselves against having to permanently negotiate with the rest of a university issues of how to spend the money and so on and so on. You know? And it's made us freestanding institutions allowed to operate in Asia. And one of the reasons we are here, we are able to be here, is because we are an independent freestanding institution. It would be almost impossible if we were part of the traditional system. We have been operating in Asia out of Singapore for now something like 7 years. And we're in the process of expanding significantly, since we are building a campus in Nepal Hill, close to NUS and so on, which means we are here for the long term. Now I hope that we'll enjoy this discussion about innovation strategy in the service-driven economy. And you probably have seen this, not the pictures, but the sculpture there in Singapore. And I like it because it's about, you know, kids pushing themselves, jumping in the water. And, you know, innovation is a little bit about that. Now, of course, the risk is limited because we know we are in Singapore. The water is not very cold. So it's fine, you could jump. But innovation is about taking risk. There is no question about that. It's about taking risk. It's about allowing for a certain level of uncertainty. And you know, even if that's not the topic for today's, that to a certain extent, Singapore is a bit losing ground. Singapore was ranked amongst the most successfully innovative country in the world. But that was mainly based on the fact that Singapore worked very well its strategy to sponsor R&D. But now we are in a world in which we understand the difference between R&D and innovation. R&D is about developing new knowledge. Innovation is about deploying the appropriate sort of knowledge in order to reach a market. And you have to be very flexible in the way you do it. You have to be able to adapt. And nothing can be planned to such an extent that it's 100% for sure. And we see that Singapore, who is so well organized, somehow is facing difficulties to deal with the uncertainty of a world in which you have to take risk in innovating, including experimenting things you're not sure will work. And I think it's vital for Singapore to come back into the very first position in this list of innovative countries. It's important for the city, for the country, for the community, to allow for a little bit of chaos. That level, right? Not that. Nobody wants to go to work like in France, in which, you know, it's chaos everywhere, and we love it, but you know, it's not always efficient. So there is a limit, but a little bit is needed. And, you know, we have an executive seminar today working with Keppel Land, huge company. We are very proud to be associated with them and working on innovation with them. But you could see the discussions are very much around this topic. You know, level of risk we are able to take, that we accept to take, as opposed to the sort of certainty we want to deal with in order to make a decision, right? So it's about jumping to the water. It's why I like that, coming from Singapore and opening door to taking some sort of risk. Controlled, but still. Of course, we may say innovation is one thing, but why in a service-driven economy? Why did we associate service and innovation? You know, in 2004, among the many things, I launched the Institute for Strategic Innovation in Services in France. And it was one of the first time in the country where we precisely decided to associate those two words, innovation on the one hand, services on the other. Why that? I'm asking the questions. Oh, I see people there. Now, any reaction to that? Why associating?
The suggestion is that it's not innovative. The other way around. Service industry doesn't innovate.
Well, it is. You are right. It is for many reasons. The idea is that the service industry might have difficulties to innovate. One reason being that usually they don't do R&D. Yeah, well, very few service companies actually run an R&D department to start with. And in the mind of many people, innovation is associated with R&D. And of course, it is. There is a link, a strong link, but we claim that R&D is just a resource to be able to innovate. It's not equivalent, first thing. Second thing?
People. It uses a lot of people, so it doesn't, people just,
yeah.
The same number of people, they do the same thing all the time. You don't.
Well, there is a sense of repetition, but you put the finger on something very important. In services, activities is mainly people-centered, which means that precisely when you want to innovate in the service industry or in service businesses, what you have to put in place is really a real strategy, because you have to convince usually large populations. If they don't tap into, if they don't believe, if they don't embrace innovations, then innovation doesn't take place. In manufacturing, you could say, okay, I innovate because I put together a totally new process, but it's fully automated. So even if people are not convinced, then you might enjoy the benefits of innovation. But in services, if people don't embrace it, nothing happens. Not all the time, but in many cases, because it's people-centered. So there's a challenge here. Absolutely. Very good. Other possible reason to associate innovation and services in the 21st century? On top of everything we have said, that is extremely relevant.
Then the reverse is true. There's a lot more things you can do. If it has not many has been done, then
you're right. It's full of opportunity. Right. It's a huge field of opportunities. On top of it, of course, what's important is to realize, and we know that, but it's, it goes without saying, but it's even better to say it. The economy in today's world, including in countries that are very manufacturing centered like South Korea and so on, still, it's totally dominated by services. Now, for example, in terms of the active population, in November 2011, something happened. Nobody noticed, but something happened. Do you know what the proportion of the active population working in manufacturing in the USA as calculated in November 2011? Population of active populations working in manufacturing. No risk. I'm not in it's not a day where I grade anyone, so I don't have to grade, so you take no risk. Jump to the water.
A few millions?
No, proportion. Percentage. Percentage of the active population. 30. 30. Good. You say?
50.
50. You say?
10.
Okay, 5. It was a time when it went below 5% of the active populations. 2/3 of the people employed in manufacturing companies are not actually doing anything in relationship with manufacturing. So if you look at actually the people that are really dealing with manufacturing in the US, it's actually less than 5%. It doesn't mean that the US are not producing a lot. They are, but they are using automated process, robotics, And you know, you have 1 to 2% of the people working in agriculture. It doesn't mean we don't need agriculture. Of course, we need agriculture. We need to eat. But it's not producing jobs. It's because we have raised the productivity of agriculture a lot. What do we do in manufacturing? Exactly the same thing. So manufacturing is becoming a drastically important businesses that doesn't generate jobs. And then, which means what? Which means the rest of the population is working in services. And of course, it's reflecting also how we will produce value. Because more and more we produce value based on the provision of services. All type of services. And many services in relationship with manufacturing, but still services. Then, if you look at the situation during the 20th century, many businesses, service businesses, were created because they were providing a support to manufacturing. You know, we started to design, to produce cars, and then driving cars, and then someone said, well, wait a minute, people have to be insured, and then we created car insurance because we had a car, right, to support. In the 21st century, it's becoming just the opposite. Meaning, in the car industry, well, you produce car to sell what? To sell leasing. Because leasing is a service, but leasing is much more profitable than selling a car. So sometimes you need a car to sell the leasing. And you make money out of the leasing, not out of the car. You still need the car. But it's not an end in itself. Right? So things are somehow reversing. And more we need tangible product to actually help us enjoy or benefits from an intangible value. And it's no longer that we want to have a computer, right? We want to enjoy everything we could do with IS and IT and for entertainment, for our life, or whatever we need to communicate. And we need devices, but the devices in themselves are not at the heart of what we consume and produce. And that's somehow drastically changing the way the economy has to be managed, and as a result, the way innovation has to be defined. Another thing, in the economy of the 19th century, what was the logic to make money? To become rich? Feel free if you want to take off your jacket because it's so hot. And we did not, I don't know why, I mean, it's coming, but it's not very good because it's early. You know, the logic to become rich, buying and selling, transfer of property. Everything was based on the idea that you transfer the property. You know, I buy raw materials, I produce something, I add value, and I sell something to you, and then there is transfer of property, and bang, 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 become rich. Now, could you give me the name of a company that produced more billionaires than any other in recent time? What's this company I'm thinking about? The company that produced the largest of billionaires, being, for instance, the employees, the first generation employee of this company that became billionaires, and the shareholders.
Microsoft.
Microsoft would be one, but Google is the one usually we refer to. Right? Does Google deal with transfer of property? Absolutely not. Right? It's an example of this 21st century sort of money-making, huge company that are producing wealth no longer based on the transfer of property. You don't even know who really paid for the service. I mean, there's a business model behind it that has nothing to do with the sort of traditional way we have defined during the 19th century, right? The ones that are benefiting are not even paying for a large part of the business. Still, some others are paying, and it works extremely well. So then you see, not only that we consume more services on a day-to-day basis, being individuals or company, because it works on B2B and it works on B2C, but on top of that, you see new business model emerging in which some companies, where they identified a need somewhere, even if the needs cannot immediately be materialized in terms of, you know, selling things to them, it exists. And they work out the business model that make it good for them and producing significant value, even if this has nothing to do with the traditional approach of business. So now, in the 21st century, we have to think about innovating in this sort of new paradigm. And the companies that are really winning in today's world, where there is a competition are precisely the ones that are addressing innovation in that logic. That has nothing to do with the 19th century economic logic. You know, 2 years ago, the chairman of, not this here, but the chairman of the board of BMW said, on a provocative tone, of course, he was kind of joking, but not that much. He said, you know, he was very optimistic. By 2015, 2016, we might no longer sell cars. BMW, right? BMW enjoys a very big image. It has a leadership on the technology side. And then there is this guy, chairman of the board, who said by 2015, 16, we'll no longer sell cars. What did he meant? What did he wanted to say? What was the logic behind this provocative thought?
So lifestyle.
Yeah, but he was talking about lifestyle with a substance behind it, not only lifestyle in terms of image, but yes, of course, it's a continuation of this idea of lifestyle. Solutions. Solutions such as, you know, well, he says, for instance, in discussions, more and more in mature market, where people no longer see the value of owning a car, because there is markets where people still want to, or age. You know, I don't want to say it to the people that are working with me, but I'm already an old guy, you know, and when I was young, when I was 18, you know, in France, the first thing you wanted to get was your driving license, and with the driving license, being able to buy a rusty car gives you freedom. Now I have a team of researchers there, people around 25 to 35, 2/3 don't have cars, and 1/3 don't even have a driving license. This generation, they don't want to buy cars anymore. Now, are they mobile? Yes, of course. Do they want to travel? Yes, of course. Do they want to buy a car? No. Because they make the calculation and they feel it's such a waste of money. You know, we are convincing people to put a lot of money in something that immediately depreciates a lot. And you end up, if you look at how much you spend in buying cars all over a lifetime, to throw so much money out of the windows that these young and smart people say no longer, we don't want to buy a car anymore. And they are not even in Singapore, right? If they were in Singapore, whoa. So what? So the guy was saying, basically, we have in mature market, like people in Germany saying, look, during the week, I want the blue sedan to go to my office. But during the weekend, you know, close to 50, and I want to have the convertible, maybe yellow, to enjoy a good weekend. And in wintertime, I want to have a four-wheel drives, sport utility vehicles, BMW X5, to go to the mountain. And those for vacations, I need the station wagon. But I don't want to buy any of these cars. Could you provide that to me? You see? Which means basically what the most advanced customers are looking for is service from BMW to provide what they need when they need. They don't want to buy a car. They are ready to pay a monthly fee that goes significantly above what they would pay to buy one car. But it goes significantly below what it would cost to buy 5 cars, right? And they basically say, you know, the guys from BMW says, we do have to be smart enough to think, to define a new delivery process. Because delivering the sort of services is somehow more complex than just manufacturing your cars. So we have been thinking about a system where we manufacture a car, and when it's done, we just sell it. Now, manufacturing the car is just the first step. Because then we have to look at how to permanently switch cars when we need them, how to make the car available, how to make sure we fix the car to look good, to look brand new if we do that, and to work out a ton of different sort of services that are an integral part of what we produce to the market. But it's fairly different than just being focused on manufacturing. Manufacturing becomes just the first step of a much more complex operations process. And you know, BMW started thinking that way a long time ago, because they were the first one in the industry to provide during the late 70s, beginning of the 90s, the three services in one: financing, insurance maintenance. So it was the first one in Europe and then in different parts of the world to say to their customer, look, I mean, you pay a monthly fees and you get the three things on top. You have the car and financing. Why that? Why is that they started to do that? Please, you're welcome. I was just asking, why is that? This one is better? OK. That's the French way. We chaotic, as I said, you know, and provocative. Why is that? Convenient. You know, we immediately think about the positive aspect of it. But no, they did it because of constraint. They did it because, at that time, people willing to buy a BMW would be astonished by the amount of money they have to give to their insurance company. The premiums were very high because these cars used to be stolen very often. And on top of it, people were driving fast, accident all the time. So people would be attracted with a car, and then looking at how much they would pay in insurance, they would back and buy another one. So they felt like if they could negotiate with Allianz, a big insurance group, and look at volume, they could reduce the premium. And they were already making a lot of money into the financing, so they decided to make less money with financing in order to put some money into covering the insurance, providing a package that was economically much more attractive to the customers than what the customer could do by themselves. Which already tells us that if you face the constraints, it's actually a way to stimulate the innovation because they would not have started this kind of journey into the service industry if they did not face the difficulties for which they have to find another solution. And by the way, talking about difficulties, 2008, financial crisis. The US economy is almost collapsing. Cars and car manufacturers could not sell anymore, right? There is one company, only one, that succeeded in growing its market share in the US during the period 2008-2010. Was? Sorry? No, Ford totally declined. Ford came back to the fore in 2011, 2012, and now is in good positions. But 2008, 2010, Ford and GM went, GM went to bankruptcy, and Ford was very close to bankruptcy. So market share drastically declining. Only one amongst the relatively major. I have no figures about the little niche players like the Ferrari and so on. Just forget about those players. Just the big ones. I mean, not necessarily big, because it's not it was not at the time when very large. It is now. No, but you get closer. Thank you. No. Exactly. The Korean Hyundai. Why? Why is that this given company succeeded at growing its market share and in volume selling more, while all the other were declining significantly? Why that? Well, look, in the middle of a financial crisis, do the people want to buy cars? No, they don't, right? Almost everyone is trying to sell cars to people that don't want to buy cars, right? There's only one company that decides to think a little bit more about what it means to have to sell to people who don't want to buy. Now, basic process in innovation. Why? The 5 whys, Why? Why is that they don't want to buy a car?
It's a liability later. So
Sorry?
It's a liability later. So
exactly.
They provide a program to buy bigger cars within a year if they lose their job. So
exactly right. You have the solutions. People don't want to buy cars, especially in the US at that time, because you don't have safety net. France, in fact, there is a little bit of a safety net. People don't earn that much, but on the other hand, when they lose their job, they still have money a little bit for a certain period of time. So the level of stress is not that high. But in many states in the US, there is no network. If you lose your job, you lose everything. And you're already paying for your house and everything, you know, overloaded with loans all over. So people just don't want an additional liability. So they don't want to buy anything, actually, because they are scared to actually lose a job. And Hyundai said, well, so I'm going exactly to offer a guarantee that in case you lose your job, then we'll take the car back, and you will have your money back. And then suddenly you had people that actually sold their Ford, the one they bought just 1 year before, but they did not have this guarantee, to buy a Hyundai to get that guarantee. You see? And Hyundai was providing the satisfaction of a vital need, a sort of job-losing insurance. Of course, that's a bit ridiculous when you think about it, because if you don't need a car, why having an insurance to, you know, in case you lose a job? But that was exactly the right message, and it's all about innovation. It has nothing to do with the product themselves. I mean, you have to have a product that is decent, right? If the product is totally lousy, then it will not compensate. But if you have a product that is comparable to the other, finding the right way to touch the customer when the customer really needs something, which is not a car, but is sort of reinsurance, then you win. Nobody imitated them. Why that? Why is that all the others did not immediately follow that path? Because they all said, oh, it's too risky. Do you think it was risky? No. Because at the end of the day, when you look at 3 years down the road, you look at the figures, they are the lesser than average amount of, how do you call it, payment difficulty. I mean, when people don't pay. Payment default. Less than average. Why that? Because the people that are sensitive to this sort of insurance are usually the people that don't lose their job. Of course. And the people who lose their job are the people that are not very well insured, that take risks, they are, you know, blah, blah, and then they also lose their job. When you make sure that you are fully protected against everything, usually you don't lose your job. Right? But of course, everybody was in the industry was saying, Hyundai is going to fall because it's so risky. But no. Again, you have to test, you have to see, you have to really look at what really people are sensitive to. They are simple things, but it makes a difference. OK, so a few slides now, because since I prepared slides, I have to use them. Not that it's really useful, but I like these pictures because no personal relationship with these kids. I don't know who is this guy. But first, I like it because you see, it's politically correct. So driver doesn't drink, while the dad might actually buy alcohol. The second thing is it's about protecting the kids in the supermarket, making the life today easier. And the third thing is precisely about distribution, which is a key part of the service industry. So first things, as I said, services. I'm going back to what I have said, right? Just giving into details. Services touch the life of every people every day. And it could be considered as lying in the very hub of activities of any society. You know, manufacturing. If you look at history, manufacturing is relatively recent in history, but service has always been provided. You know, restaurants and hotels have been around since human being existed. I mean, it started a long time, and education, and you know, and healthcare somehow always been around, right? So it's a key part of what we do. Western economies, as we have said, they continuously add position in services, but they are shedding jobs in manufacturing. And again, you see recovering. When a recovery takes place in any sort of economy, you see that it's always starting with services. Why? Because, again, we might postpone buying a car, but we cannot postpone going to school. We cannot postpone if we are sick, you know, getting to a hospital and so on. We need transportation. We need to go sometimes to a restaurant. We might pay less to go to a less expensive restaurant, but we need to eat. So we cannot stop the consumption of services. So even during any sort of period of stagnation, we still keep consuming services because it's a human nature. Right? Another thing that is more recent is starting in the middle of the 2000s, services that was not considered as a key part of international trade suddenly took off. Why is that? Why is that services are becoming a more and more an important part of international trade, where it was not in the past? The internet, technology. You know, the problem with manufacturing, the problem with services is that it's usually consumed where it's produced. As a result, service company could expand abroad, but usually through FDI, foreign direct investment, not selling abroad, right? So McDonald's could go all over the world, but it cannot really export services, because if you produce a McDonald's output in I don't know, in the UK, you cannot consume it in Japan. I mean, it's not possible technically, right? But the internet is drastically changing that, because then you could produce a service in Bangalore that is simultaneously consumed in London, right? So as a result, you export or import services, whatever, because it's produced in one place and delivered in another, which is relatively new in the way of thinking. So the technology is offering the possibility to really drastically grow the volume of commercial transactions internationally on services. And of course, it will grow. And then we have phenomena such as, for instance, hospitals in Bangkok providing services for people in the Gulf or people in the US that will go to India or to a place to get treated because it's so expensive to do it in the States, for instance, especially if they are not very well insured. And that, of course, is part of exportation of service. In fact, you import the client, but statistically speaking, it means like you export the service to the US when an American customer comes. So we see a drastic growth into international traded services in recent years. Also, as I said, we see that wealth is now created in the service economy significantly. And it's also due to the fact that, as it used to be in manufacturing, wealth is based on the capitalization of innovation. It's because you put together a system that is significantly more efficient, more appealing, solving problems at a broader level. And then you create a source of wealth. And leading brands are emerging in services. And more you see brands that are of key important value. You know, we have agencies appraising the value of brands independently of what they do. And in the past, all the valued brands were actually in manufacturing. And now you see more and more significantly valued brands that are in services. On top of it, of course, economically, as the World Bank call it, we see this wave of services. Now, on the long run, services is economically replacing what agriculture used to be. Agriculture used to be the main source of employment and activities all over the world, right? Manufacturing was actually never the main source, usually not producing more than 30 to 40 maximum % of GNP, even at the peak, even in Germany. Jutta is from Germany. And services is obviously taking over. We are in societies in which people no longer work in a farm. They do work in the service industry. And a very few work in manufacturing. But on top of being something that alters the economy, on top of just looking at the switch of activities, what we see also is the growing importance of the experience, which means it's no longer just a question of what do you provide in terms of the tangible stuff and then the functionality of service. Is what sort of experience you generate and how much people are ready to pay for enjoying an experience as opposed to just paying for a function, something that works, or a service that just feed you or just deliver a function. And if we think about that, and of course the most popular case is about Starbucks, of course, and there is a limit to the system, and we'll see the end of Starbucks one of those days. But so far, it has proved the progression of value has proved dramatic. The idea that, you see, because you come from a, you know the story, because a cup of coffee costs 5 cents, and you charge $5, and actually much more in the US. And why that? Because the experience associated with the time and consumption of a Starbucks was valued by the customers at that given price, which has no longer anything to do with the value of the cup of coffee itself. So when you are in a position to actually shape this experience, put together a system that produces this feeling that what you enjoy as an experience worth it, then of course you generate real value for both, for the shareholders on one hand, for the beneficiary of the service, the client on the other. It's why they like to say that you get from a price that is based on just the market price of the raw materials to a premium approach. And investing into services is very much about doing that. And to a certain extent, people also love, something that makes the French somehow very uncomfortable. If you look at BMW Series 3 or even 5, and you look at the Peugeot, and people might not know the Peugeot, but they have a lot of subsystems in common. Actually, they have worked a lot with one another. So the cars are in fact very similar. But nobody sees that. Because the whole packaging, the whole experience you deal with when you actually buy the car, everything that is not directly linked to the car is so much better managed by BMW than by Peugeot. Then people value the BMW much more than the Peugeot. And you see how ridiculous it is, because the French politicians then saying, we have to invest in manufacturing and so on. Look at the Germans, they do so well. And then you look at the German, you feel like, wait a minute, BMW, Siemens, many others, they have invested the field of service much better than the French. And one of the reasons their manufacturing products are so well appreciated all over the world is because they are associated with a provision of service that is extremely well defined. And that's something sometimes the French politicians have difficulties to understand. It's why at the end you come to Singapore and you say, well, it's easier to actually deliver this sort of lecture in Singapore that is in French. That is all related to what a couple of American researchers called the progression of the economic value. And they summarize it in a way that I think it's relevant. They say that basically, sorry, it doesn't look good. You had the first step of the economy is about commodities. When the economy is agrarian, the offerings is mainly commodities. Sorry, you don't see it. The economic function is more like extracting from a mine or just agriculture stuff. The offering is fungible, especially agricultures. The key attributes are natural. The method of supply is just to store in bulk and then you get it. The sellers are actually just traders, and the buyers are the market, and the factor of demand are linked to the characteristic of the product itself. Then the progression of economic values goes from commodities to goods. Goods, elaborated goods, are all about, based on an economy that is called industrial economy. We actually make things. We don't only extract. We transform. We add value by making. The nature of the offerings is much more tangible. Now, traditionally, to make manufacturing sustainable, you have to have standardized product. So you turn to produce the same thing. It's what makes the output affordable. It's inventoried. The seller is actually the manufacturer. Well, I mean, it's manufacturing, producing value, and manufacturing, selling. The buyer is actually a customer, and the factors of demand are the features. And then, they say, then you see, we switch to services. And then, okay, The offering is a service. The economy is no longer industrial, but it's services. But once again, think about that. If we want to be efficient in an industrial world, we don't want to apply the model that has been defined for agriculture, right? Agriculture economic model don't work in manufacturing. And manufacturing-centered or manufacturing-defined economical model don't work in services. We have to define appropriate system to run services because the economy is different. It's not like just application of recipes. How are you, Anthony? The offering is more intangible. Now, the big difference is services tend to be customized because most of the time there is a direct interaction with the customer, so there is something customized. It could be standardized, but most of the time it's not because the output of a service is actually what the customer feels. The experience he or she has enjoyed, right? So it's customized, just the true nature is per definition customized because what you change, what you modify, what you alter is the customer itself. In manufacturing, you take a piece of things and you modify that, and the output is tangible. But in services, what you change is actually the customer, right? And you use everything to change the customer. So per definition, it's much more customized because we are all different. It's more like deliver on demand. The seller is a provider of service. Buyer are usually called clients, different than customers. And the factors of demand are more and more like the benefits you get out of a service. But then they go further than that. They say, but services, there is one step above, just to do with the experience economy. When precisely what you provide is an experience, and the economic function is no longer to deliver, it's to stage. And you know that. I mean, the most advanced restaurant concept or someone, they don't only want to deliver food, right? They stage the way it is. I mean, and we do that very well in Singapore, right? I mean, obviously you go to Marina Bay, you go to so there is a staging sort of things. And more, provision of services is about staging, right? Because we are willing to produce this experience, this feeling that we have been enjoying something exceptional, that is changing our perception of the world. We have to be different the day after, whatever the service we enjoy. So it's very much about staging, which is much more sophisticated than just delivering. And of course, it's a source of innovation to switch from delivering to staging. The nature of the offerings is not only intangible, it has to be memorable. If it's intangible but just a function, it's bland. Okay, the function has been fulfilled, next step. Memorable is when we think about it. Wow, time I have spent in that given place. The lecture I got, not here, of course. I mean, I'm talking about, in a serious place. And, has changed my world. The time I spent in this given theater really made a difference, and so on. Now, it has to be memorable. So we try to create the sense that there's something on top. I have really been transformed. So the key attribute is more and more, it's not only customized, it's personal. And the method of supply is over durations. We don't want to do it once. We want the people to be addicted to this sort of relationship. The seller is now the stager. The buyer is no longer even a client, he's a guest. And we want to introduce different sort of relationship. It's no longer purely commercial. I don't want to pay for a service and I go. I'm a guest. And then the relationship with the provider, stager, is clearly different. Of course, it's commercial, but it's no longer really obviously commercial. It has to be something else, more sophisticated, more intimate. And the factor of demand is linked to the sensations. And now, they go even further. But then, I have to say, it's not me. Because next step is questionable, somehow. They said there is a next step, which is transformation. When you offer an effectual offerings to an individual that is sustained through times, the seller become an elicitor, the buyer become an aspirant, and the factor of demand is about aspirations. Then you feel like they are talking religion. right? So there is maybe a limit to, you don't know exactly where you want to stop in staging your service to such a point where when you create is some sort of a mythical and mythical relation with this. You know, Apple, yes, be nice. You don't know. So the service constitutes the very heart of responsible value creation in the 21st century. That's an additional point. We all are sensitive to the notion of sustainability, protection of the environment. And when we think about that, this economy based on the production of mass things that we waste is awful. You know, we are killing the environment because we are applying this 19th century economical philosophy. When you produce things for people that don't even need what they have bought, and then they don't know what to do with it, and then they waste, and we have ton of whatever. While if you find a way to transform the consumption of something tangible with the consumption of a service, most of the time you do good for the environment. I'm not saying 100%, but most of the time. To start with, you recycle much better than in manufacturing. The content being intangible, the physical part is actually lesser important. And you don't have to produce that many. There are many, many reasons why you end up consuming something that is an experience, has a lot of value to you, but doesn't consume any environmental resource. You know, producing an emotion doesn't necessarily mean always wasting resources. If you want to produce this emotion based on something else than just delivering ton of goods. So on top of it, services seems to be really the answer to the responsible value creation. Not always, not 100%. I'm not saying it's obvious, but many examples are now showing that. So the economy is turning its focus toward the demand-driven production of utility rather than the good alone. Services should no longer be viewed as only supporting the transformation of consumption of goods, what I said, and more manufacturing systems have to be monitored to perfectly respond to the requirement of a continuous delivery of positive service experience. What counts is a positive experience, service experience we deliver. Manufacturing has to follow that logic, which is a drastic change of paradigm compared to what it used to be in the 19th and first part of the 20th century. You said I had three hours, right? 3 to 4 hours. Fine. Okay, good. Feeling good. You will have the slides of all that. Just quickly to say that there are a lot of innovations based on technology that are changing the world in the service industry. You know, emergence of new media, the new reality, information transparencies, new platforms that are going to change everything because the silicon-based sort of electronic is something from the past, will be replaced very soon by the nanotechnology, the modular computing, and so on. And on top of everything, social power and smarter world. Social power emerging as a key component of almost any human activities, even in the developing world, and so on. And the smarter world, you know, you could sit if you feel like, because I'm feeling that you might get tired. I mean, when you talk, that's easier because you know you kind of don't think about that. But when you don't talk, it's better to be seated. In a smarter world, when we equip people more and more with devices and tools that are becoming more and more sophisticated over years. And when you think about it, you know, all the smartphone. What can we do without the smartphones? The only thing, we go to bed with a smartphone, right? We do everything with a smartphone. But when you think about that, even the young people here, it's very recent. I mean, just a few years ago, we did not have that. And now we just cannot survive without them. They came to the fore as an intimate part of our day-to-day life in like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I mean, just like that. And it's just the beginning. And we know that we'll have more and more sophisticated devices, especially tapping into the new platform, allowing for much more capacity to calculate and much more capacity to interact with our environment. You know that already when we go across, you know, a Louis Vuitton sort of things and so on. I mean, they immediately get information from your smartphone and know exactly who you are, how much you buy, how much you earn with your mistress and so on. I mean, everything is kind of known already. But still, you know, you don't. But we know that now it's going to be so obvious. We walk in the street and you immediately could get information about what is for sale here and there, the apartment on the market, where are your friends. I mean, it's going to be more and more and more like that. Next stage, which is the awful one. In France at ESSEC, next month, we have a lecture actually coming from the UK. And the guy is a professor of electronics in the UK. And he called himself the first cyborg. He put a chip in his arm, and he does the same thing. He did the same thing with his wife, and now they communicate without talking. You see, it's all electronically done, and it's kind of scary. But I don't know about all the interaction that might come. I mean, it's kind of scary, but it's just, you know, opening a path for thinking about what the future will be made with. Combining all this very sophisticated device with the power of social networks. That's going to drastically change the way we behave. In fact, it's going to drastically change who we are. Because we no longer be the same sort of animals, right? So that has consequences at many levels. First, little tiny consequences. Just an example, not even a recent one, but it's opening doors. Johnson & Johnson, big pharmaceutical companies, you know? In a long time ago, 2007, century ago, they were asked by provider of services to help them to assist and support providing of care in post-cancer sort of process. So Johnson & Johnson put $50,000 in to put together a website and to pay someone to look at the interactions, just to, as a matter of being nice, you know, sponsoring something. Did not have anything in mind. Then they realized, within a period of few months, that this social network that was established to help the provider of services was in fact generating a huge volume of information about collateral effect, world of most impact, new treatment suggestions. And it became, matter of months, a key source of invaluable data for marketing and R&D. So this company is spending billions into developing new products. And just because someone asked them to put together a social network to help, they suddenly find themselves facing the possibility to suddenly get much more accurate, much more directly usable information at a $50,000 a year cost, which is nothing for a company that level. And then suddenly you say, wow, it's going to opening doors, unexpected doors all over. And it's just an example amongst many, many. And in the healthcare industry, it's drastically changing. I'm actually working in France, in Europe, with Roche. Roche is now #1 in the world in terms of the spending in R&D. And their main objective is to establish a direct link with the patient. They realized that for many, many years, they were selling to pharmaceutical networks, reselling things, and so on. But we know that actually, most of the time, like half of the treatments are not appropriate. You know, the physicians are just writing the same prescriptions because there is no other possibilities. But we know it doesn't work for very serious sort of stuff. Only part of it is work. How to make it more reliable? To have a direct contact with the patients, to establish a link, and to make sure that we analyze and reformulate a customized sort of medicine. And technically today it's feasible, and it's not even costly. We have all the technology we need to establish a direct line with the patient, to analyze all in partnership with physicians, and then to produce and in no time, very quickly, a much more reliable sort of individualized treatment. We just have to make it happening. But it's technically doable. Now, it's not always doable because of the regulations in such a country. There are a lot of things that make it difficult to put it in place, but it's not the technological part. The technological part is easy and not even costly. Then we have to deal with societies and the way it is organized. But it's opening doors to a ton of possibilities. And of course, again, it's about innovation in the service of providing the care. And Roche still is a manufacturing company, but they have made their cultural revolution. They define themselves as the one providing healthcare services, not medicine anymore. Medicine is just an ingredient, a means to provide the ultimate, which is the healthcare services. But it means entirely redesigning what a pharmaceutical company is. And we could say that whatever the industry, we see this move from innovating in the tangible product to switching into, at the end of the day, providing an entirely defined service. In that particular case is the Messier Bugatti, which is a company designing and manufacturing braking system for aircrafts, right? Due to R&D, they define very advanced carbon discs. The problem with these carbon discs, they are very expensive. So if people buy them the way, companies, airlines, buy them the way they used to, it's very expensive. On the other hand, you could recycle the carbon very well. So the problem is how to make sure we actually recycle to make the total cost significantly lower for the user than just the traditional sell and buy. And by exploring that path, they ended up providing the full service of maintaining the braking system of aircraft. Now, in aircraft, more and more, you see that braking system is not owned by the airlines. It's still owned by by companies such as Messier Bugatti that provide the service and get paid in function of the taking off and landing of each plane. And of course, the engines are still the property of Rolls-Royce that work exactly the same way, and the tires are owned by Michelin. So the entire aircraft is actually a series of an architecture of services provided by many players that used to be only manufacturers and no longer manufacturers. They are service providers using the manufacturing as a way to provide the service. Again, it's a revolution. Time is flying, so I don't want to go through that so much. But no, this one, no, not too. Apple, please help me rather than to make my life more difficult. Okay, then. You have to talk nicely to this sort of animals. You don't know exactly who is the smarter. Is it me or the computer? I'm not too sure anymore. A few years I knew I was smarter than them. Now I'm not too sure. So there's a deep tension between scalability, which makes services efficient, and customization that makes them attractive to customer. So service innovation is very much about finding the solutions to deal with this contradiction, right? If we just want to make services efficient, we just reproduce. At the end of the day, it's customized because we feel it's different individually, but we might receive the same treatment. That doesn't satisfy the need in this economy because we are dealing with the willingness to receive customized answers. So innovation in services has a lot to do with addressing these contradictions and finding the appropriate solutions to do more, to do both. Efficient services, customized services, attractive and affordable. So the art of service innovation is very much about coming with ways to manage that tension. And of course, technology is offering resources. Technology is not an end in itself, but it's a means. Web-based services, automations, do offer solutions to deal with this contradiction. Right? We could customize a lot of things because we use the appropriate technology. Economies of scale also contribute to innovation at a higher level. If we work out a large volume of transactions, we could learn a lot from the difference. If we establish the way to learn from the difference, if it's not only delivering, but it's delivering as a way to experiment relationship and to get input from the relationship with the clients and beneficiary of the service. So we can gain for sharing, and it helps to accumulate knowledge, to grow the stock, inventories of knowledge the company has. And is that a lot to do with the rule of the game? In today's world, any company has to permanently work at getting more knowledgeable. If you just stop at one level and you don't work out to make sure that we know more about the customer, about their future, about competition, about technology, if we stop learning permanently, we are dead in today's world. So certainly, service innovation is also about finding a way to grasp that knowledge and to use any information we get to be more efficient. Now, to end, I just wanted to kind of propose, offer a 3 steps decision-making process in kind of working as a journey from an idea to the creation of value in a service/experience-driven world. First step, understanding what really the markets want. But the problem is, we don't know what the market is. It's no longer as easy to define as it was in the past, since, as I said, look at Google. Who is the market? Who is the customer? Right? When we think about it, well, the beneficiary is definitely part of the market. But the brands that are advertising are also part of the market. And we are in a world in which more and more we see that there is 3 levels of appreciation, not only 1. So the market is not just, you cannot say customer, period, like if it was an easy concept. You know, I solve everything about customer. We don't know what the customer is. Because in this service economy, we have 3 levels. The user, the consumer, the beneficiary, the one that is benefiting from the service itself, whatever it is. He or she could be the user. He or she could be also the provider of money. He or she could be actually a it, because it could be in B2B. But there is a level that is benefiting. But then there is another level, which is the one that pushes resources into the game, paying for the service. But it's not necessarily the same one. I mean, if you take stupid things, but you take, you know, education. Kids are benefiting, but parents are paying. So the parents and the kids are not the same, right? You travel. Most of us travel is on business. We are benefiting from the service, but the company is paying. We usually don't pay from our pocket. We try not to. And then very often you have another level, the one that is prescribing. You know, the physician that prescribes the use of that clinic. What I call here the specifier, because I don't know exactly how to I don't know the right word in English. But this level exists. And why is that this level is becoming even more important in today's economy, in today's world? Why is that this level of specifier is growing in importance in many, many businesses? Much more than in the past. Anthony, you know why?
It's all about conversation.
It's all about social network. Anthony Chow is within the ESSEC Asia-Pacific team, the one in charge of developing social network strategies under Jan Belek, who is the head of marketing and communication. Under Yuta, who is the head of everything, operation and so on, the one working usually when she doesn't waste her time listening to me, like this morning. You know, in today's world, if you want to go to wherever places and you want to go by yourself or even business, what do? You go to any website and you look at comparison. And then suddenly the old fashion of just advertising, you know, I'm the best hotel in town. I mean, look, it's not true. I can see it. Many people say this hotel is lousy. So if you don't develop some value to that level, then of course you may lose a lot. So why is that so important to specify the expectation at this 3 level? First, because we see that the demand might be somehow competing. And coming back to travel. When we travel, we want to be very well treated, right? Traveling first class, going to 7 stars hotel. But if you work with education in Europe, I'm not talking in US. You know, I've been working with NUS, and I could see the NUS. You know, they treat faculties very well. But if you're in Europe, you know, it's different. You know, systems says basically travel economy and so on. You have to negotiate to get a little bit of, you know. But you see, why? Because institutions are not poor, are not very rich, right? But we want comfort. So then you have a competing demand. And then you see at certain time an American Express willing to fight against growth of the Expedia types and so on, came to big companies saying, look, let's pull together all the demand. Then you are a Unilever. I'm offering to work out all your demand at the worldwide level. And given the volume of business, I will leverage the volume as American Express, and I will tell Singapore Airlines or British Airways, look, this company will pay economy, and people will travel always business class because I have the volume. So by combining competing demand, I find a way to add a service, to provide a value, because precisely we look at the situation in two ways. Another advantage of looking at this different level is that the best way to convey the market voice all along the channels. Because at the end, there is always a user. You know, we get used to B2B, but B2B makes no sense. It's B2B to B2B to C. At the end of the day, there is always a C somewhere. But if you restrict your vision to the B2B, you might miss a lot of opportunities to innovate. While what we have to do on a B2B is to consider what your customer has to provide to the next step and so on. And when you have a view of the entire line, then suddenly you see you could provide things very different. You could tell to your client, your customer, look, if we provide that, you actually are being yourself in a much better position to your own B. That will be in a much better position to their own C. And suddenly by looking at the whole channel, value chain, you open the door to many opportunities to innovate. But if you stay and restrict your vision to the B2B period, you miss a lot of opportunities, right? It's why looking at that is helping to conveying the market voice. And then at the end of the day, it helps to shape much more sustainable business model. You know, you are somehow glued to all the levels. Meaning if something goes weak on one side, you still have the other, right? Rather than only to focus on one side. I have an example that I like about a company defining itself as providing innovation in the continuous delivery of relevant and efficient solutions to meet the complex challenges of cities. Companies is relatively medium size, truly multinationals now, was originated in France. That's why I like it. No, it's not why I like it. I like it because the concept makes a sense. Do you have any idea? Might not be. It's also a company that was among the first to address the market, looking at customers as being simultaneously citizen and customer. You know, most of the companies are looking as customer on the one hand, and politicians are looking as citizen. And then we could look at them as people to raise and so on. But people are multifaceted. They are everything the same. So this company understood a long time ago that any individual in the street is simultaneously a citizen and potentially a customer. Just by thinking that way, it offers a lot of possibilities to innovate. This company is called Decaux, Jean-Claude Decaux. And if you go to Changi, you will see many ads at Decaux and so on. And the whole idea was very simple. So I think in the 60s, right? They defined a bus shelter, because in cities, at the time in France, they didn't have bus shelters, and it's raining in France, and as opposed to Singapore, the rain is cold. So not only, you know, you don't want to be wet, but on top. So, and they were happy with their bus shelters, and they went to city authorities, and they said, you know, hi, mayor, would you buy that? What would you answer? Yes. No, not you, not them. Smart, what would you say to them? You would say, well, sounds a very good idea. I like it. But it means you are going to use public space. So you will pay to use the public space, right? So good concept. I want you in my city, but you will pay for it. So who is going to pay? Well, then, wait a minute. We will have people waiting. 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. They have nothing to do. Especially at the time, 60s, no smartphone and so on. So it's best place to put an ad. Because they are there, they are captive, right? So the whole idea was to say, well, let's make sure that we have brands paying, and the specifier is the city authorities. If the city authority doesn't pay the game, you cannot even provide the service. So they are part of the service. They are a market. They don't pay. Actually, you have to pay them. But they are part of the market. Right? The beneficiaries, they don't pay. You cannot, they already pay for the bus. I'd say in France, they pay sometimes. In Singapore, of course, they will pay all of the time. That's a different sort of environment. But you cannot ask them to pay for the bus shelter. Right? But they are benefiting from the service, no question. And it has real value to them. So there's a market there. There's a need. And then you put together a business model. At least 3 levels. A beneficiary that doesn't pay. Brands that pay for the service because they see an interest. And a specifier or an authority that prescribes the service. Cities level. And you see more and more of that. And Decaux has been very good precisely at addressing from the early beginning, the market at these 3 levels, permanently providing value for the 3. They permanently go to the brand, explaining why it's better to advertise for that product in that area. Each spot is associated with the numbers about the possible return you will get, and depending where it is in the city or which cities, they will tell you in that part of the city you have to advertise for this sort of product, in the other. And they have to fuel that, especially now because there is internet add on top. And then you see their history, they permanently developed solutions. Every other month, they put on the market a new solution, right? And one of the most dramatic has been the bike renting sort of thing. Now they are the largest bike renters on the planet. Initially, they started in Spain and Austria with middle-sized cities, and then they switched to Lyon, which is bigger city in France, and then Paris, what was a big challenge. In Paris, of course, as usual, it's always complicated because they started with 50,000 bicycles, 20,000 and 50,000 bicycles. The first year, half of the bicycles were either stolen or destroyed. Well, do you think they make money out of renting bikes? Well, they make money as long as they don't make money. What do I mean by that? Renting bicycle is not a profitable business in cities. No question about that. But as long as the margin is negative, then as a Decaux you negotiate for the exclusive right to advertise all over the city. So rather than to have to renew the contract every year and to face competition every year, then you invest in a city for 5 to 10 years plan, and even more. And for these 5 and 10 years, you have the exclusivity of advertising all over the city. So then, as long as it's not profitable, it's profitable, because you have this exclusivity. If it becomes profitable, it's a nightmare, because then suddenly you disconnect the contract. And then suddenly you get back to competitions for advertisement every year. It's much more challenging. And then you have to make margin out of this very low margin business. It kills the business model. So the business model is very much about the relationship between different things. You provide solution to get the right to advertise, and you make the brands to pay. But in order to stimulate the whole market, you have to offer new opportunities every single day. And they permanently look for new things. Now, do they manufacture bicycles? Absolutely not. Do they manufacture bus shelters? Absolutely not. Right? They are the innovator. They have the concept. They work out the architecture. Then they subcontract. They identify who could provide the hard piece. And they could not propose a new solution every 6 months if they feel like they have to internalize the function. It's only possible because they play as innovator only. And an innovator has to very quickly identify who could partner with them in order to provide this new generation of services. But they certainly don't want to be a specialist of bike design and manufacturing. If they want to keep being the innovator at providing continuous solutions to the cities. Right? Their specialization is that. It's neither that or that. They use that as an ingredient of the relatively high-level service they provide to cities, right? Now, if we look at the bicycle per se, are the bicycles just the like you would buy in a store? Well, not here, because I don't see many bicycles, but they are not. They are much heavier. Why is that? Well, they are used extensively. They stay outside all the time, so they have to be much more robust. They also have to be much more safe. All the cables are hidden to avoid the cable to be cut by, you know, I don't know why. And are they high-tech? Well, you may expect a bicycle not to be that much high-tech. But there is an issue of responsibility. If there is an accident, right? If there is an accident due to the lack of maintenance, if it is your bicycle, you're responsible. If you don't take care of your bicycle, you have an accident, that's your fault. But here, it's not. It's the city's fault, which, of course, report the responsibility to JCDecaux. So the bicycle have to have devices to permanently diagnose the vital functions and to communicate with the booth automatically through RFID to block the bicycle if there is any vital function in trouble. And since the service is appraised due to the availability of the service, the booths also communicate to the network for the maintenance, and there is a truck coming, taking the bicycle out and replacing it by the bicycle that has to be used. So you see, the bicycle itself has to be entirely redefined to fit with the needs of a service economy. It has nothing to do with designing a bicycle in the 19th century logic of just transferring property, right? Which means that then in the service economy, we have to deal with the second level of a challenge, the second box, which has to do with efficiently balancing combination of service experience, physical support, and time appreciations. There is no way where I could write. You know, it's my classroom, and I just forgot about having a board in which I could write. So I'm going to write on the wall. No, I think Jutta is not going to like it. So, and on top of it, she's German. So if I write on the wall, and I can imagine my life's going to be a nightmare, so I cannot do it. So the whole idea is to say any new offerings in this service economy, in fact, could be defined in 3 different dimensions, not only one. There is usually at the top a service experience. I have to define what the service experience is, and the service experience I was to produce. That's the ultimate value. To do it, I need a physical support. I mean, almost nothing could be provided without a physical support. You know, if you want to go transportations, you need taxi, which is physical. You need an aircraft. You need a physical support. Here, you need a bicycle. If you want to enjoy the benefits of being in a car, you need a car. If you want to eat in a restaurant, you need food and plates and a building. You know, an entirely virtual restaurant doesn't satisfy needs for long term. It kills its customer very quickly by providing nothing, right? So you need a physical support. But the idea is to make sure that we define the physical support in order to fit with the service experience you want to provide, not the other way around. And it means in the design process, each of the decision regarding the definition, the design of the tangible product has to be made in function of the consequences on the services. And there are trade-offs. Sometimes providing more services and less physical content is actually good. Look at that, for instance. Nobody really questions. I mean, Apple will probably be in trouble in some days, cannot be successful forever, of course. But when you think about it, and I have an iPhone. Nobody questions the validity of having just one iPhone. Apple produced just one at a time. You know, yet Nokia, BlackBerry, they have a full portfolio of devices. Apple has only one. And nobody questions, nobody says Apple is kind of a low-cost, basic, not at all, just the opposite, right? But when you think about it, there is only one physical device at a time. A much more simple approach to the market. But of course, the customization is almost unlimited because of the service content. So each of us are going to totally customize our Apple, even if we just all buy the same. You see? So it provides tremendous value on the service side with only one type of physical support. But the physical support has been defined in such a way that it's very adaptable. And then you would say, okay, well, so we go to what we call an hybrid sort of offering, which is a combination of services and a physical product. Yeah, but there is a third dimension, time. And how you manage a relationship with the customers over time. You see, traditionally, it's like we sell, done. And then we wait. And then a couple of months or years down the road, we have to sell again. And then competition is entering. But in the meantime, we do nothing. Now, what we say is, whoa, we have to monitor this relationship over time. And to monitor in such a way that, in fact, we will permanently provide value over time. So this resale sort of dimension will not exist. Because we as customers will naturally, being a B or being a C, right, will naturally kind of permanently enjoy additional value and pay for that without having to really stop and say, wait a minute. Let's give voice to the competitors. Let's compare. But no, as we all know, we end up paying a lot for the Apple systems. And of course, it's possible to switch, but it's very painful. When you have an iPhone, an iPad, a Mac, all is connected, you get used to your equipment and so on, and then you want to switch to another brand. It's not something you do very easily. Of course, it's doable. It's a bit more painful than just changing your car. Right. Now, if you're an airlines and if your tires are from Michelin, changing is also difficult. So more you involve yourself into providing a series of enhancements all along the life of the relationship, better you are glued with your customer. It's why we would say today a new product is no longer something you touch. It's a combination of three values, tangible, service experience, and a series of things you do over time to monitor the relationship. And that the combination of the three that makes a new generation of product in the market. So I like to, since I talked about Apple, of course, I'm going to give this example because it's so easy when you think about it. Sorry. It's not the best, but it's best known, even if it's not the best. But you think about that, 2001, iPod, physical device. Not that many functions, very limited. Attract the attentions, work a little bit, 3 years down the road, not that much to do. Then iTunes. iTunes is purely services. Suddenly iTunes gives the dimensions to iPod that was totally unexpected. And because you have an iTunes system, then you become the #1 worldwide music supplier. You reinvent an industry. You reinvent the relationship we have with entertainment. We don't even notice it. But the old paradigm of how we consume cultural product is totally altered by the Apple approach. And because we have iTunes, then we receive stimulation all the time. And when Apple launched an iPhone, it's so natural. Nobody questioned the credibility of that. If BlackBerry or Nokia have launched a computer at the time, people would have said, wait a minute, what is this company doing in the computing industry? That's not their industry. Did anyone address the issue why Apple is entering the communication industry? Not at all. That was perceived as a natural sort of move because they were no longer in the computing industry. They were in something else. And even if nobody was able to express the need for a smartphone, we were all waiting for that. It was a latent, implicit, very strong need. And then Apple provided it just where we were ready to consume that services. And then more service, and then more product. And you see that permanently, they stimulate the relationship in such a way that you grow, you find yourself in the trapped in the network, in the Apple system. You're like the fly, the fly that finds itself in a spider net. I'm in the net. And then if I'm a very smart spider, I come and I put some drugs to make the spy feeling okay. And then I'm a spider eating the fly, and the fly is happy because of the drug. You see? So, of course, Apple doesn't want to kill its customers because they need to live long, but that's the same idea, That's the dark side of the old philosophy that I have been developing, because there is a dark side. At the end, we are trapped. Happy, smarter, but trapped. It's up to us. Third dimension, the value equations, and at the end, you know, okay, we understand this three approach. First, identified what the market is, addressing the need at different level, understanding the competing demands, combining the possibilities. Second, developing the offerings, you know, these combinations. Combination that is permanently changing over time. Nothing is engraved forever, right? And the new tangible, the new service, I mean, it has to be renewed, it has to be stimulated. And then we have to define the appropriate value equation at the end. How we charge the market, for instance, to start with, you know? Because if we say we want to provide value to the customer being the combination of the three, what I call customer here, is defined here, right? So how do we provide the value? How do we get return? Who pays? What? In what form? And again, that's very important to find the right way. As I gave the example at the beginning with BMW, you know, having people to pay for the three with insurance and so on, was a way to redefine the value equations. At a time when people were just paying for buying a car, then they're offering another way to pay for the car. And it has to be readdressed all the time, right? But on top of it, of course, we have to provide value to the investors, shareholder investors. We like to feel like all shareholders are investors, sometimes questionable. And the shareholders that don't reinvest are not necessarily doing good for the economy. And we expect them to invest. But of course, if there is no value at that level, there is no investment. If there is no investment, the end of the whole system. So of course, we want to provide value to the investors. And more, as you know very well, companies have to demonstrate they are providing value to society. Not only because they want to do good, but for more practical reason. Because it helps to strengthen relationship. And it helps to increase brand equity. And even more, in the 21st century world, if you want to keep being creative, you have to tap into the creativity of your whole environment, of your whole ecosystem. Your customers have to give their best to help you to innovate. Your suppliers, your partners. It's no longer something you could do within your ivory tower in your R&D centers. That's gone, right? You have to go faster to the result. You have to tap into the possibility of a world. If you are very good in one discipline, you probably need something from people in another discipline. So innovation, the rule of the game in innovation is very much to identify the way to tap into the creativity of the world. And if you demonstrate that you're really delivering value to society, you're in a much better position to mobilize the creativity of this ecosystem. And then that's my last example. I just wanted to introduce the world's greatest bank, which is almost a joke. You know what the world's greatest bank is? Self-proclaimed world greatest. Not largest, greatest. Not largest. If you don't know it, I assume it's they call it Umpqua Bank. The name is Indian. It's a bank that started in Oregon, Portland, Oregon. It's an Indian name for the river that is crossing Portland. Started in 1953, and it was almost one or two branches sort of local retail bank for many, many years, growing a little bit. And during the 90s, the whole landscape of retail banking drastically changed in the US because regulations allowed for merger and acquisition that were not allowed before, right? So the people at that bank asked themselves, do we want to be absorbed by a larger bank, or do we want to, to stay independent? And they decided to be independent. But since we were during the late 90s, they were like, okay, but we are at a time when if we want to be independent, of course, we have to grow because we are too small. And if we want to grow, we have to cope with the logic of the time. The logic of the time was very much about online banking on the one hand, and the start of thinking about corporate responsibility. So they were like, okay, online banking means we don't need the branches anymore. Yeah, but we have branches. And how do we define our mission? We are a retail bank. We are providing services to the local. So let's redefine the role of the branch as being community center. So then in the late 90s, all the banking services was provided online, but the branch were providing another sort of services. You could go for concert, lecture, meeting. You did not have any one from banking there, you have a barista providing, there's a Starbucks syndrome, providing coffee, but no longer anyone you could deal with for banking issues. That was not the case. Now, if you were really in need of information about bank, you still could see little boxes here and there, and you could look at boxes and see car loans, and you take the box and you go close to screen, and immediately you see, because they communicate through RFID chip, you immediately see the proposition. If you like it, you type your email address, and it's sent to your email address. But on top of just being a space for cultural activities, the branch became an incubator. Meaning, the idea was to tell the people, any sort of project you have to launch a new business, like a hairdresser sort of things, or you want to work on a social sort of things, a local garden or a local nursery. Let's work out the project there. You have a space and you have expert on demand, an IBM concept. So you could type and you could have someone in charge of a tax specialist, or and these people will, free of charge, associated with the bank, will deliver the service. So you work out your project in the bank. At the end of the day, if you want to get finance, then you could deal with the bank, but it's free. I mean, but if you don't have to. If you need some particular expertise, like tax system in Mongolia, right? Well, I mean, it's not necessarily someone you have immediately available in Portland, Oregon. Then you type in advance, and the branch try to identify the specialist. And then you have a virtual appointment. When at the time, you could have this person on demand that has been booked for half an hour or an hour to deal with your issues. And that's all free of charge, right? It worked so well that the bank expanded, especially during the financial crisis. 2008, ton of people started to question their relationship with the big banks, Citibank, Fleet, and so on, all over the world. And exactly like Hyundai, they enjoyed a massive transfer of customers from the big banks to them being perceived as a responsible local bank working for the community. And now they operate all over the West Coast, from the north of state of Washington to the south of California, all over. They're not yet on the East Coast, but they enjoy the significant growth based on the communication that they are much more responsible, much more listening to the customers' needs and to the needs of the communities than the traditional banks that have lost their real missions. Banks being money makers from themselves, at least the way they are perceived by the market. Umpqua being perceived as a bank for the local community. In each of the places they are the local bank, where people feel like it's a part of my community, and I get there to socialize and to work out issue of social interest, while the banks makes money, right? So, on the other, it's I could go on like that for a long, long time, but I'm not. I think I like that, because that's the how we will look in a few days. Just to end, to say, now what we have to do is to enhance the capacity and implement a culture of innovation at a country level, at an organization level, in our individual mind as well. And the rule of innovation today is about service innovations. Whatever you deal with, even in manufacturing, what we have to focus on in service innovations, because manufacturing has to be revolutionized to integrate fully this dimension of services. Okay, that's it. I think it's set for today, because I could go on and on like that, but some of you might really be kind of tired, and so I'm going to stop now. If there is any questions, will be, I mean, you could, if there is any questions, please go, and you could answer to your own questions. That would be an innovative way to address it. Floor is yours. Oh, okay, so I go on? No? Questions or comments or whatever? Yes, please.
With regard to the Asian economies, I think most of the service business which we have is probably outsourcing in developing countries, which is basically the services which are kind of outsourced to the...
I mean, you're thinking about, for example, India, Bangalore, yes, all the outsource, which is coming back to international trade, is certainly a large part and certainly is of key importance. But services is everywhere, right?
Yes.
It's not only that. That is a visible part which stimulates the international trade in services. But if we are here, look, that's an hotel, that's services. Hyundai, I talked about providing a lot of intangible value associated with its car. Education, which is a key service, is growing all over. Bangkok has a lot of, the Bangkok Hospital, which is a private chain of hospitals doing. So it's much more than just that. But this outsourcing part is something of key importance to actually grow the business in international.
Yeah. So my question is, in that sphere of services, what is probably the freedom of an organization to go for innovation? Because you're finally doing something for somebody else. You've been told that you have to do it this way.
Services is all about doing things for somebody else. There is no service you do for yourself.
So you feel in such organizations also there is definitely a good scope for innovation.
It's interesting because there is discussion with the founder of Infosys on that, because he's member of the International Advisory Board of ESSEC, and it's funny to see that one of the problem is, and it's true in manufacturing, it's true in services, the difficulty is to instill a sense of innovation all over the company, as opposed just to maintain it in little pockets. And yes, it did. I mean, again, services is all about interacting with others. Whatever the service you provide to a market. You always do something for someone else. In a restaurant, you cook for someone else. In the back office of IT, you do create information for someone else. That's exactly the same thing. And yes, indeed, there is a lot of things you could do. The problem is, within operations, people feel on the service side, they feel responsible for reliability and low cost. And on the other hand, they deal with purchasers that are looking for reliability and low cost. So they understand each other very well. And none of them are interested into innovations. Because the only thing they are looking for is low cost, reliability. On both sides, these companies have to fuel the innovation pipeline. Both sides are desperately looking for providing more value, but at another level. And how you translate that on the ground is where the challenge is. The problem with innovation, whatever the setting, has very much to do with how you work out the translation, the transition, the interface between the area where you define what has to be done and operations. Operations, per definition, are risk adverse. They are against innovations because it means shaking what you do. And that's risky business. And that's true whatever the company. It's not specific to that. Now, if we look at carefully, for instance, the Bangalore-based IT provider, they are drastically innovative. They could offer a ton of solutions to companies in the West that they are working with. They usually could really help them to do much better, but neither within the organization or in relationship with customer, they establish a dialogue. So the difficulty is to establish a dialogue at a higher level, to say, look, we are an expert. We are developing such and such approach. You need that. Let's work together on innovative project in parallel with the bulk of the day-to-day volume-based transactions. And if it works, then we'll apply it to the volume. So there is no doubt that the potential for innovation is huge. And it's particularly huge because, especially in India, and in China, but India especially, is where you redefine business models that are 10 times more efficient than the old way to do stuff. The processes could be defined in such a way that you could provide much more value at a much lower cost, especially compared to the West. So the potential for innovation is key. You just have to find a way to establish the dialogue at the right level and to work, to experiment solutions. You. Please.
I don't quite get that part when you mentioned about you make money when you don't make money. Because at the end of the day, investment in innovation probably got to translate in some sort of like a business outcome. Right? So the example about JCDecaux, I don't quite understand that. It sounds pretty enlightened. I work in a bank, by the way, so I'm not sure Umpqua whether is it profitable.
You work in a bank?
Yeah.
Good example. Umpqua. Do you think they make money out of providing free services in the branch?
Exactly, probably.
Probably they don't.
Yeah.
Right.
So how do you?
No. They don't. Or they do.
How do you quantify
But the
that?
problem is, if you are short-sighted, 19th century approach, I produce, I sell, and I get the money. Of course you don't make money that way. But that's 19th century approach. In today's world, we don't think that way. If we think that way, Google cannot exist. Because when Google gives you a service free of charge, and they don't make money, wait a minute, they have produced tons of billionaires. Do they really not make money? Of course they do, but it's not direct. And the problem is, 19th century economy is all about direct transaction. It's about, I produce, I sell, I get immediate return. And we have not been educated to think that you could make much more money at not thinking that way. I give you something for free. As a result, you give me twice what you would have gave to me the other way. Umpqua is growing fast because customers are giving the bank much more than they give to other traditional banks, but not directly. If Umpqua is asking for the money, it doesn't receive it. If Umpqua becomes this unavoidable partner to work on project, I naturally, if I'm working on this project, I trust that bank. When I want to financing, I go to Umpqua. And Umpqua is actually a bit more expensive than the other bank, but I trust them. So I get the loan from them. I pay more, but I feel like it's okay. Umpqua makes more money. Why? Because it has extended free service to help the people shape the project, to establish the trust, to establish the loyalty, to establish a relationship not based on commercial transactions. Because in the world, many people are fed up with commercial transactions. You know, I have to say, you are going to hate me. Something I hate about Singapore. I go to a store, and immediately I have a salesperson come. I immediately go out, right? Because I want to make my choice by myself. I want to be free. I don't want to be influenced by a salesperson. Salesperson are the ones that are fooling me. They are trained to manipulate. Now, if I want to buy a car, I don't want to have a salesman coming and telling me what car to buy. I want to make my choice myself. I'm big enough. I have a PhD and so on. I don't care. You know, I know more than this person, and I know what I like. But 19th century is all about selling the traditional way. People don't know what they want, and then you tell them what to buy. Okay, if the market matures, you're going to do that anymore. You cannot sell something to me that I don't want to buy. Maybe you could have done that to my dad, but no longer the new generation. I'm not new, but you know. So at the end of the day, what's important is to make sure you establish a trustable relationship, you establish a sort of connections that makes long-term, recurrent revenue to permanently be fueled. In the case of Deco, what they want is to make sure that, for example, for 10 years, I will have the exclusivity of advertisement in this city. Right? That was valuable. Because if I can tell this brand, look, you see, in Paris, minimum 10 years, I fully control the situation. I could get much more from that brand, and if I say, well, you know, it's just 6 months, because in 6 months we'll have a new competition, and then Clear Channel will come, and I don't know if I will keep the exclusivity. Right? So what is at stake for me as a Deco is to make sure I will be stick for at least 10 years. How do I do that? By providing the city with something free. So the cities, and you explain, I'm sorry, I'm doing that, but I can't make money out of it, so I need something in return. Oh, okay, what do you want? Well, exclusivity for 10 years. Okay, fine. So you get the exclusivity for 10 years, and you could go to the brand and ask for a lot of money, and as long as you demonstrate that renting bicycle is not profitable. Because if it's profitable, then the city will say, oh, wait a minute, we have two contracts. One, we have competition on bike renting, and the other, we are advertising.
At the end of the day, still need to be profitable. I mean, long term.
Yeah.
But look, it's what I'm talking about. You know, you don't understand? Is Google profitable?
Yes.
Is Google profitable? Yes. Do you pay to use Google? No. So is it? You see? I mean, so what do you say? We should pay? You think Google would be more profitable if we paid? No. The system is different. I'm just talking about being very profitable, but not the 19th century way, right? If someone tried to sell a shirt, I go. Is it profitable? No. It's more profitable if they put me in a system in which I do it naturally myself, right? I will buy more, right? Umpqua, they put people in a way that they work project by themselves, free of charge. They spend hours in the bank, right? So they get a loan at 1% more higher interest. Is it profitable? Yes, very much. Why? Because the first stage is free. So what's important is the profitability, but not to do tomorrow, the day after. It's long-term thinking.
That's the problem.
It's not a problem. It has proved extremely successful. It's not a problem.
We can't make business case to management within a short term to say this amount of investment. What is the ROI that we're going to get? So
Get the management to attend this course.
I mean,
it's really and like
you see what you are comparing less profitable company with more profitable company. One thinking short term, the other one thinking long term. You take Apple. Is Apple profitable? You remember the capitalization? $500 billion? No longer, but you know, because the company with the highest level of market capitalization. Wow, right? But they do it in a way that is very different than the old approach of economy. And Google is it's profitable, but it has generated a lot of money. And Umpqua enjoyed the growth that was more significant than any other. I said, Hyundai, providing these services, this guarantee, the only company growing despite the market decline. I'm talking about profitability. I'm talking 100% about profitability. And I'm just focusing on profitability. Just like in the 21st century, it should not be addressed the way it was addressed in the 19th century. Because if you are in the US and you want to sell a car, by all means, to people who don't want to sell a car, do you think it's more profitable than providing a system to have the customer coming to you because they feel like rather than to pay for a car, they will have an insurance? It's just a bit more sophisticated. It's just not like, okay, I go, and then you want to buy the short, please pay. Don't want that anymore. You want to buy a car, I sell a car, So I pay more in promotion, I want more ads, and I want more salesmen. Now, let's make sure we put together a system where I don't want to buy a car, but I end up buying a car that I don't want to buy, and I buy it. Why is that? Because nobody is selling the car. Because what we sell is much more sophisticated. It's the insurance that I feel after I have spent the money, I feel I'm more protected. It's a new approach. Now, you need innovation champion in companies. If you don't have at the top of companies CEOs or top executives that don't tap into innovation, don't try to sell innovation, it will never work. Of course. I mean, if you are the only one in the company trying to make the company innovative against the will of the company, it's going to be very, very complicated, right? It's why there are a lot of people who say that what you need in companies are not necessarily the ones that are running projects. But you need at the top people that might not be creative, not be able to handle a process, but they will champion innovation, cover the risk, accept to take limited risk, but to take risk, to experiment, to be the one that will give a sense of culture, of innovation. If you don't have that at a certain level at the top, it's extremely challenging. Of course, no question about that. But then another position, if you're really innovative, is to become one of them.
Hi, I really enjoyed the
Thank
talk.
you.
I'm from a real estate company, and as you know, Singapore, we have HDB, which is the biggest developer in Singapore, and doing a lot of social good for the country.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
how would a private real estate developer be able to, like what you said, create social value, and in a sense compete with what the biggest developer in Singapore is doing? Because I think that is a good thing to do. But how do we say, okay, now we are doing something good for the country, but there's HDB doing cheap housing and creating very vibrant communities at the same time?
I think obviously it's a very well framed problem. I would love to be definitive about the answer, but I will have to study, because even if I look like I'm kind of crazy, in fact I'm doing a lot of back office work to prepare, and in a situation like that I will have to look at the case in details. Just general thinking.
Yeah.
More and more we see that precisely when people want to house themselves, they are confronted to a ton of problems all over the world. Take Paris. Paris is very expensive, I think. And then people are looking for example, extra room. When you have your parents traveling, you don't know what to do in Paris because you usually have small flats. But the people that are developing are not thinking about providing this flexibility. So for instance, a possible just direction is to say, okay, I want to develop something in which people would have access to extra capacity when they need it. Rather than just to say you have a 2,000 or 1,000 square feet sort of place, you say it's 1,000 square feet sort of place, but you could double when you need and so on. Because it has to be managed. It's like the BMW stuff. If everybody is asking for the same service at the same time, it's just impossible. So it's complex, but it's possible. Second thing, you may say, am I going and buying and selling? It's sometimes complex. I don't have the time. So why not being the partner of owner for the lifetime, trying to work out the time dimensions, making sure that if you have a new kid, you know it, and you already look at how to possibly suggest a move, and being paid not in function of what you charge for one given flat, but you charge for a capacity. In the trucking industry, more and more, Benz, for instance, they don't sell trucks anymore or large fleet. They sell a capacity. And when the trucking companies needs more capacity, they pay more in capacity, and then provides additional truck or redefines the truck. The truck are still owned by Daimler, but the trucking company enjoys the flexibility that they need. You might expect to get that also from so-called real estate or development companies. Then we might have issues such as socializations. Okay, well, we know we have swimming pool and nice place. More and more in Singapore is actually very well done, and the world could learn from the nice development in Singapore. But what about studying? What about space for the children to socialize and study? We know our education is important. We know how competitive it is. Why is that integrated in the development program? To have place fully equipped, and why not providing teachers as well? Sometimes to help at her. So I don't know the case, but I think there is a possibility to have the creative machine working, to look at a ton of possibilities, and then to look at the feasibility of each, to combine, and at the end of the day, looking at possibilities. Then we have to experiment, because it's not because we have thought about a solution that is a good solution. We have to experiment. We have to ask the users. We have to come back and take full account of all the creativity of the network, of the future user, and then shaping solutions that make sense, solutions that might evolve over time. So I don't have the solutions, because your problem is extremely well framed but complex. But I feel like there is an opportunity, looking at families, extra room when you need it, education, socializations, other dimensions than just housing, all related to housing. And if you play your card well, you might end up being more competitive to a certain extent than more established system that may be more traditional and slower at innovating. Right?
So would the first step be to really understand the users? Understanding
being what we call living lab, or become what we call also design ethnography, which has a lot to do with, because if you ask customers what they want, they don't know, right? Per definition, we don't know what we want until it's offered to us, right? It's very difficult to create a new market when there is no new market. I mean, if people don't want something, if I don't want something, it's going to be difficult to really force myself to get it. But there are so many things I may be willing to get if I knew they were offered, right? So what's important is to put in place system, could be light, to watch, observe, be with the customers, and understand, as you said, how they behave, to what sort of things they are sensitive. Not asking them, just living with them, watching their difficulties, identifying what's difficult, what could be done better, how to house the mess, or in a better way, or whatever. And then when you start understanding, then going back with possibilities, saying, if that was done, would you like it, and so on, when you have understood the whole thing. You don't ask. You understand, get the understanding, you put together a prototype, something simple, and you test the prototype. And if the answer is so positive, then you experiment it at a small scale. If it works, then you go for the large scale. But understanding is key. At the 3 level. Because we have 3 levels here, more than we have the beneficiaries, maybe some other could pay, and we always have a way of specifier, regulators, and so on that actually works.
Thanks.
No, you're welcome. It's wonderful topics to look in depth in it, but sorry not having worked on. But, any other questions or comments? From the back? Thanks,
It's interesting what you mentioned just about customer don't know what they want until it's
offered to, yes.
Is that usually the case? Because sometimes, you do focus group discussions, we do customer surveys, we ask them
They don't know. I mean, all the innovators of the world have said that, and it's always true. I mean, if you Henry Ford used to do, if he was asking American customers what they wanted, at the time, they would have said faster horses, right? Nobody would have thought of the car, right? Then when you have the car, you buy the car. So what's important is to be like Henry Ford, looking at people and feeling like, wow, horses, slow. And then they have to eat, they have to take care, gives hours. And maybe if you offer solutions that is more simple and so on, and suddenly they will say, wow, that's exactly what I need. Once again, mobile phone. You remember the expert at the beginning, years ago, nobody was expected the mobile phone to be that successful. The experts were saying that it would be only for emergencies, the police, and so on, and cell phone will never grow at a big rate. I mean, experts are always like that, because experts are playing safe when they always say things are impossible, right? If you are an expert of something, you say that it's just impossible.
It takes really smart people to innovate and invent.
No, not smart, but you have to be anti-risk adverse. If you are risk adverse, it's extremely difficult to innovate, right? But again, we are not saying that in the same time you want to take any sort of risk and be crazy and killing the whole thing. It's stupid. You have to run a balanced portfolio of projects, some being risky, but with a high potential. And a lot being significantly less risky, but you know that the potential is also less. But you fuel the risky project with a less risky project. Of course, 9 out of 10 of the risky project will not work. One might actually drastically change the position and provide a ton of value. But you have to balance the portfolio. It's like a portfolio of investment. You have to make sure that to justify experimenting these very risky solutions, you have a series of other projects for new products that are just incremental, not big chunk. Pretty sure how much you would get as an insight. And when it goes to customers, the rule of the game to this world is definitely not to ask. It's to put customers in such a way that you share their life. You live with them. And you have ethnographers, sociologists, searchers for all, the pragmatic people, not the ones that are writing books and doing PhD. No, we're talking practical ones, right? That are trying to get an in-depth understanding of what is behind the behavior, what people really need that they cannot express. And then being sure that you come, as I say, you come back with something like, and what about that? Look, I have a little prototype. What? That, what are you talking about? This something. Try it. Oh, that's exactly what I need. But I didn't know. right? So the whole process is all about that. If you just listen to what people say, it's very limited. It's good to have people talking, but sometimes they will talk about something else, something that has nothing to do with what you do. But from what they say about food, you might get good ideas about banking. Because it's precisely when things come naturally, then you realize, well, there is an opportunity here. Yes.
Prof,
oh, Herve is my
yeah,
name.
People. Some people have often have said that technology, and of course the internet is like a leveler. It enables smaller businesses, smaller companies in smaller countries, to be able to compete globally. Do you believe that, or do you think that actually it gives an advantage to the big companies, and that actually eventually how this is going to play out is that in all industries, that there will be global consolidation?
Oh, very important questions. Just one thing. Small companies and small countries are not exactly the same, right? Because Singapore is a small country, but it's a huge economy.
Well, the reason is that very often is because, a lot of big companies have become big because they had big domestic markets and they are where they are. But now they are in a position that they are in an advantageous position.
Of course, no, you're right. Especially true for North American companies. It's more complex for European companies because European companies have different markets to deal with. Because like in Asia, markets are different. And express needs differently and so on. And gives actually an advantage to both Asian and European companies that North American companies no longer really enjoy. So you have North American companies that are really working out their own revolutions to deal with the reality of a very different sort of dispersed world. And you have the ones that stick on their procedures and so on and have difficulties in the work. The smart one, of course, by the way. I don't have a dramatic answer to your questions, but first thing, obviously, in today's world, the most innovative country, to start with the countries, are the small one. I mean, if you look at it, we talked about Finland, we talked about Israel, we talked about Singapore, almost none of the large one as considered as the most innovative. Switzerland, why is that? Because small countries have been open to the world much better than others. And if you deal with diversity, per definition, you are ready to adopt new ideas and you compete with other parts of the world. So Switzerland always made a fortune out of dealing with the world. Holland as well. Israel is a very difficult geopolitical situation, had to innovate from the inside and so on. Finland, why is Finland became one of the most innovative countries? Because in 1991, there was the collapse of the Soviet Union. And all the economy of Finland was about international trade with the Soviet Union. That was a gate to the Soviet Union. Soviet Union economy collapsed, suddenly, big problem with Finland. They had to reinvent themselves. And they used technology. And Finland, we were smart enough at that time, precisely to do something we have not yet done in France, which is to understand that you have R&D and innovation, as I said. So rather than to have one public agency, they put together two, TechS and Intra. One is focusing on incentivizing research and development, more like technology, manufacturing driven and so on. And the other one is about innovation. Meaning the one that is focusing on innovation takes the ingredient produced by the other one. But they made it clear that you could develop innovation based on very little technological support. As a result, this agency is doing a lot in service innovation, precisely because service innovation is not always technologically based. So when it goes to country, my understanding is that because of the situation, usually they are more open to innovation. And then technology helps a lot. When it goes to company, in fact, we talked about Microsoft, we talked about Google, we talked about Apple. What do? They permanently look around for the smaller firms that have developed a particular expertise in one given technology. And when they have identified them, they try to acquire the company, or if they can, to work out a partnership. Which means that if you're a small company working out of specific expertise, in the technology. You might not get access to the world market, but you certainly grab the interest of larger companies that are no longer innovating enough because they are too big and need your input by all means. Now, there is of course the most risky things, which is really to grow internationally by yourself as a small company specializing in one technology. But I would say yes, in today's world, the technology helps small companies if they are really smart. In that particular case, we're talking about being smart, right? In dealing with the technology at a level of expertise that is so high that much bigger organizations see as an interest at paying premium to get access to that. So yes, indeed, I believe that technology is helping smaller entities to get access to the world market directly or through partnership with bigger organizations. And it's certainly true for countries. And I personally believe that in today's world, small countries are in much better position than any large one. We are somehow coming back to what was Europe during the 16th century or 17th century. You know, the very strong Italian city, Venezia, Geneva, and so on, were so active because they were small, very well organized, having a global reach, agile, and could do a lot of things. And we see in today's world, small countries or big cities working as independent countries almost are much more competitive than big products because of all the inertia that has to do with size. And if you are a large company, you have to learn how to be agile, which is one of the big challenges of many, many large companies. So it doesn't come, of course, free of charge. It means a lot of work. It means a lot of expertise. It means to do what, for instance, Singapore have been doing for a long time. Focus on education and research. Developing more and more school of engineers. Pouring money into a system to be able to put together the very best curricula for educating engineers. And Singapore is an example for the world one.
But using your same example, like you said, the small countries or what, they tend to do more of the R&D kind of stuff, the technology side of things. They maybe invent things. But at the innovation side of things, that's when you leverage on the technology, and then through a business model, you're able to sell your services or goods in that's not being done. I don't see that being done in Singapore. There's a difficulty. The difficulty is that very often, domestic market prevents you from doing that. And so the best you can do is invent something and hope to be bought up by a big company.
I said at the early beginning, obviously expert, people that are much more expert than I am, are precisely saying that one of the problems with Singapore today, it was ranked among the very top in terms of innovation capabilities a few years ago, losing ground. Precisely because it's still doing well in R&D, as you rightly said, but doesn't necessarily work the innovation pipelines well enough. And following what you said, maybe because nothing is the internal market is too conservative. There is a sense of conservatism, which doesn't help to get one step forward into. But it's difficult. Singapore is one of the safest countries in the world. It's one of the best organized. We all enjoy that. And one of the reasons we have decided to be in Singapore is because it's Singapore, right? And for all the reasons we know, it's a success. There's no question of that. But the weak point is that on the other hand, it has generated a sense of conservatism. And you see the limit, and something has to be added without destroying anything that have made Singapore and will make Singapore successful. It's challenging, but wait a minute. It's better to be in the position of Singapore than Zimbabwe. So, it could improve. Now, when we go to countries such as even Switzerland. Switzerland is a very good example. It's very conservative. The mentality of the people, very conservative. On the other hand, look at how I talk with Bosch, Swiss Group. In many industries, they are addressing the issues the way I did. And I learned from them. Because precisely they feel like the time when you do things in the very traditional way is no longer. So they get back to conservatism at home. When you go to business, they have a totally different mindset. Paradigm is clearly different. And I've been working with large Singaporean companies. And sorry, I hope I'm not going to hurt anyone. But I noticed two types of managers, both Singaporean. The one that are in charge of development out of Singapore, or have spent significant part of their time out of Singapore, and the one that are truly focusing on Singapore. And you see that the Singaporean that are working abroad, or having spent a lot of time abroad, are much more open to innovation than the one that are only sticking to Singapore, in the same company. And if I have a message to send to the CEO of this company that put the Singaporean that have been confronted to the market everywhere in position of power in your organizations to shake the organization a little bit. You know, but I hope, no question, it's one of the strongest place on earth, believe me. It's up to you. Yeah.
So I think in view of time, probably have to end the session.
I'm supposed to teach in the other room as well, but you know, I'm so much feeling good with you and being challenged of explaining the return on investment of something that looks not profitable, but it is, but you know, behind the scenes.
Well, thank you. It has been really insightful and very engaging.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Everybody agrees with me.
I don't know, but at least I feel like we had a discussion.